we'll look at that speech as a perfectly fine speech. I think you're right. It was sort of a normal speech. I don't know of any president who gets elected who doesn't say they have a mandate, but I think Republicans don't see it that way. I think that'll be the real question here.
David Ekstrom?
I think the most important things he said had to do, we may be opponents, but we're not enemies. We're Americans. We got to get past the anger, and we need to put anger and demonization behind us. And he promised to be a president for everyone. We don't have a minute to waste on partisan warfare. I think these are important messages at a time when the country is on sort of a jagged edge after a very, very rough campaign. And given the presidency that we just saw, my only question is, what is he going to say tomorrow if he gets elected? Because you expect that he's going to hit the same themes all over again. So
I don't mind.
Exactly.
Say it again.
But if Van's happy, I'm happy.
All right, let's go back to Jay.
Thanks, Anderson. We have some breaking news. Let's go right to our White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins, who has some news, some rather bad news on the coronavirus front. Caitlin?
Yeah, Jake, not election related, but we are now confirming from a White House official that the president's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has tested positive for coronavirus. This is notable because Meadows, of course, is someone who works in close proximity with not only the president, but has been around several campaign officials and top West Wing aides this week as they have been going over the post-election fallout, dealing with what the president's next steps are going to be. And now we have learned that Mark Meadows has tested positive for coronavirus. Now, it's not clear when he tested positive or what the situation is there. We do know that he has not been around people today, other officials today, because we're actually trying to chase down some reporting earlier about a conference call that he was on. And so now we have confirmed this. And another interesting factor in this, Jake, is that, of course, Mark Meadows was the person who was by the president's side when he went to Walter Reed, when he himself had coronavirus. And there were several instances where we were talking about the fact that Mark Meadows was not wearing a mask, or he had been in the room with the president and with the president did not have a mask on and he himself was infectious. Yet at that time, Meadows was tested daily. He continued to test negative. And now here we are as the White House is trying to navigate what exactly it is they're going to do, whether or not the president is going to concede this election if it becomes clear that Joe Biden has secured the presidency. And now they are also dealing with another twist, the chief of staff himself dealing with coronavirus. And Jake, this must have been really recent development because we've been reporting over the last several days how Mark Meadows has been intimately involved in what the next steps they're taking are. I was told that he was someone who was feeding the president's baseless claims about widespread voter fraud and this presidency, this election being stolen from him. So he has certainly been around the West Wing. He's been around the president. He's been around campaign officials. And so it not only raises questions about him obviously self-isolating, but if any other people he came in contact with are now going to have to self-isolate or self-quarantine, I should say, since they came into contact with someone who has tested positive for coronavirus. And of course, we should note Mark Meadows is not someone who often wears a mask. He was on camera on Capitol Hill, and when a reporter asked him to wear a mask as he was answering questions from reporters a few weeks ago, he said he wasn't going to talk with a mask on because he was socially distanced and then walked away. So this is something that we are just finding out. We're going to get more details on this, but we can confirm the chief of staff has tested positive for coronavirus.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. And we should note for our viewers that today actually was the worst day in the United States in the history of this pandemic when it comes to new infections reported. More than 125,000 Americans today alone tested positive for coronavirus. This is also the third consecutive day of more than 100,000 cases, new cases each day. And this does underline, Dana, the failure of this administration to not only contain the coronavirus pandemic in a way that at least is comparable to the way they've been able to do it in, say, Canada, north of the border, but also their failure to contain the coronavirus from the White House. This is at least the third outbreak of some sorts. You had the president get it. You had the vice president's staff get it. You had that event for now Justice Amy Coney Barrett, where a number of people got it, a super spreader event, and now the White House chief of staff.
And we could have had another super spreader event at the White House this week. Yep. I mean, the president had a couple of events, including a big one on election night, on Tuesday night. I didn't see very many masks there, did you? Mark Meadows was there. And so that's number one. I was told that he not only was at the White House yesterday, he was at the campaign. So once again, there's going to be a question of whether or not this is going to spread through the campaign, whether or not people who hadn't already gotten it in the first round when the president had it last month, whether they're going to have to quarantine at a time when they're still wanting to fight the fight. Obviously, we should say, as always, we do hope that he's okay and wish him well.
Yeah.
But wearing a mask sometimes helps in 2020, now that we know what we know about COVID.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, by my count, the third outbreak that we found out from the media, because the White House refuses to be transparent about people who are contracting coronavirus within that organization and that institution. They are obviously trying to keep this under wraps because it looks bad for them politically, but it's irresponsible. As Dana pointed out, they had a very large event in the East Room of the White House on Tuesday night, and very few people, including several White House officials, that you could clearly see were not wearing masks.
And we should just note, for anybody wondering about the situation here at CNN, we are sitting farther apart than we normally sit. We are sitting 6 feet apart. Mm-hmm. And when we go up and we go back to our offices or walk in the hall, all of us are wearing our masks. Here's my mask. Go Birds! And our cameramen and our crew it's a minimal skeleton crew here, and they're all wearing masks as well. Yeah, I mean, look, it's sad. Obviously, Mark Meadows is somebody that we don't wish this on anybody. We hope he gets better soon. We hope he doesn't show many symptoms. But it is, once again, an example of how this administration doesn't appreciate the health experts who are telling them the best way to keep this virus from spreading is wear a mask. And in fact, we've heard a number of a few days ago, President Trump was talking about perhaps firing the nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Wolf?
Yeah, it's sad. I'm not happy to hear about Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff, that he has corona. He's 61 years old, so he's not exactly a teenager or a youth or anything. So we hope and we wish him, John, only the best. We hope a speedy recovery for Mark Meadows. And everyone who was in contact with him, they presumably will have to quarantine now for a while, and hopefully nobody will get it. But it's a really worrisome development. And Biden, in his statement today, he said he fears that the number of daily coronavirus cases could go up to 200,000 a day. And he pointed out correctly that 240,000 or so Americans have already died from coronavirus.
So you take that development, and it is sad, and we wish Mark Meadows the best, but it's another outbreak inside the Trump White House. And you take what we heard from the soon-to-be, most likely, president-elect of the United States, who's been receiving daily coronavirus updates, or almost daily coronavirus updates, something the president doesn't do anymore. The president, for months, has not met with the experts. 5 days this week have set the new records, including today, as Jake just noted. And so what do you take away from that? So many things. If you listen to Joe Biden, what does he say? He's trying to tell the American people, I believe I have a mandate. Well, you can understand that claim. 74 million votes and counting. It could reach 75 million votes. That is the most votes any candidate for president has ever received. So you could say, just whether you're a Democrat or Republican, of course he can claim a mandate. He has set a record in American politics. However, his opponent, Joe Biden says it's time to stop calling each other enemies. His opponent in the election got 70 million votes and has shown no signs he is willing to acknowledge the results of this election and get out of the way. He will retain a grip over the Republican Party for sure, even if he has to leave the White House. So the challenge for Joe Biden is fascinating. Here is his map, and he's right. If it holds up, he has made quite the statement. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, back in the Democratic fold. Georgia, a state not voting Democrat for president since Bill Clinton, a recount there, but it could well end up blue as well. Arizona, a state that has not voted Democrat since Bill Clinton. This one was in 1992. That one was in 1996. Joe Biden saying, I'm changing the map of American politics because people want change. Holding all the Clinton states in addition to that. So there are many challenges, though, for Joe Biden. Now he will become president-elect. He says, let's do COVID. Let's do the economy. Let's talk about climate change. Let's talk about racial justice. He will have support in the House of Representatives, which is still Democratic, but he will also have some huge policy fights, a ruckus, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the liberal congresswoman from New York, puts it. Liberals, smartly, unified for the election. They want some big policy fights over personnel in the Biden administration and then over policy in the Biden administration. And one thing he doesn't know, Wolf, is what will be the composition of the body in which he once served. Joe Biden, a longtime United States senator. We don't know Right now, Republicans have the balance of power in the Senate, still have control, but there will be 2 runoff elections here in Georgia, 2 runoff elections that could determine it. So it's a long way to go. Just one last thing I want to show as we do this is what Joe Biden was talking about. If you come here and you look at this, the country he will take over as president if things stay on the current trajectory set a record today for COVID infections. It is everywhere, in red America, in blue America, in Republican communities, in Democratic communities. And Donald Trump is president for 75 more days. He has shown zero interest in recent days and weeks of dealing with this. He will be president for 75 more days.
Yeah, and he says, Biden, that the pandemic is getting worse, more worrisome. He's clearly concerned. He wants to remain calm and patient, but there's a lot going on. Everybody stand by Biden only moments ago saying it's clear he's going to win this race as his lead expands in Pennsylvania right now. We'll take a closer look where the race stands, what is about to happen next. Our special coverage continues.
We're about to win an NBA championship. Back to Ross.
For every NBA moment, there's a flavor on DoorDash.
When you hike as far away from it all as you possibly can, and the din and hum of technology fall away, that's pure gold.
If you have Medicaid and Medicare, a United Healthcare Dual Complete plan can give you extra benefits at no cost to you. Like $25 for healthy foods each month. With Dual Complete from United Healthcare, there's more for you.
Your house brought you together. Like, really together. And although together is great, together with more space is better. With Rocket Mortgage, you get personalized loan options, closing costs, and tax estimates, all in real time. So when you need to know what it takes for a home to fit your budget and your family, Rocket can.
Let freedom in. Freedom to work, freedom to play, freedom to simply be. Need a space to call your own? Four Seasons has got you covered no matter your style or budget. To ensure your well-being, our teams are temperature checked, wear gloves and masks, and maintain social distancing protocol. In support of hard-working Americans, take advantage of easy payments, and for a limited time only, call now and save up to 40%. With products that are American-made and American-inspired, it's time to let freedom in.
Why is Hempvana the #1 hemp pain relief brand in America?
Because it has thousands of 5-star reviews and millions of happy customers.
Because it works on my back pain.
So trusted, I recommend it to my patients.
Buy Hempvana today in stores everywhere.
I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true.
There, Robert Larson here. You know, with SimpliSafe, you get comprehensive, professionally monitored home security without having to leave your house or have anyone to come install it. You simply order it online, it gets delivered to your door, and you can set it up yourself in just a few minutes. Imagine that. So take it from an expert. Get SimpliSafe and protect your home, your family, and anything else you need to keep a close eye on.
Besides calling and texting, I told Consumer Cellular CCNI video call the grandkids twice a week. We got the perfect plan and the hashtag MyFairCC.
Hashtag maximum attitude.
Talk, text, and data as low as $20 a month. See how much you can save at ConsumerCellular.com.
At touchofmodern.com, we get that the things you surround yourself with reflect who you are. Your style, your drive, your passions. Venture through a curated collection of astonishing items at touchofmodern.com, because sometimes things aren't just things, they're you. Go to touchofmodern.com and discover the world's most unexpected items.
From deep dives to daily briefs, CNN Politics podcasts have you covered. The Axe Files, Politically Sound, CNN Political Briefing, and more. Listen on CNN.com/podcasts.
Welcome back to CNN's continuing coverage. Election night in America goes on. I'm Chris Cuomo with Don Lemon. Joe Biden, not a winner yet, but he just spoke moments ago to the country. And D. Lemon, he says confidently, we will win this race. More about tone than content. Right. The president was obviously the president. He wishes. Maybe President-elect Biden was trying to project calm, to be patient and to respect the process, and it's good advice because we have a ways to go.
We do have a ways to go, but I think that whole patience thing, and people were that I was sitting here with said, you know what? He made me feel calm in this moment. That's something that we need right now. We're talking about a lot of numbers, right? All the votes that are coming in. The record number of people who have tested positive for the coronavirus this week. The country is dealing with a lot in this moment. Chris, we're going to help people get through it. We have an election. We're seeing the votes. They have been changing all day since you and I have been here. So people want the country to come together, and that's what the possibly president-elect is saying. And he's also talking about the worsening pandemic numbers. So we have a lot that we have to deal with. It's impacting families. It's impacting the economy. It's impacting all Americans.
I mean, look, often Don and I, when we are not at work, we'll say to each other, can you believe what we're living through right now? Every once in a while, it hits you, right? We are living history.
I didn't even mention the chief of staff, Chris.
There you go. Mark Meadows just tested positive for coronavirus. Another example of how the White House has become a cluster. It's a metaphor for a nonchalance, an intentional pushing away of the reality of the pandemic. We wish him well. We hope it doesn't spread to his family. We hope he's back on his feet as soon as possible. But this country won't be until somebody decides to take on the virus. So the election matters, but the problems are continuing right along. Today, we had the most cases we've ever seen single day in this country. So let's get to business. The grind is the glory. As we take little steps, we'll get to the finish line together. D. Lemon, you and me, another night. Let's get after it. Let's do it. All right, let's do the key race alerts for where we are in the election. Pennsylvania and Georgia. Of course, we're talking about 4 states, Nevada and Arizona, but let's start. Pennsylvania, 20 electoral votes, 28,833. That's the margin for Joe Biden. Are votes still coming in? Yes. Will they change the state of play? Likely not. But remember, everything that happens adds a layer of doubt or certainty. Georgia, 16 electoral votes. The margin, 4,395 votes. Vote to come in there, very skinny. Recount, almost a given. We will watch that very carefully. Arizona. It's better when you wait for it. Arizona, 11 electoral votes, 29,861 is the cushion there. Remember the math. Biden wins Pennsylvania, race is over. If before that, Biden wins Arizona and Nevada, race is over. So you got to watch it all. All right, the margin there, as I said, just under 30,000. Nevada, 6 electoral votes, 22,657 are there. That had been late reporting. Now, a much more comfortable situation for the president. We'll take you through it on the wall in just a second for Biden, not the president. Here's the wall, 253 to 213. Frustratingly inactive, right? Yes, why? Again, the grind is the glory. You have to be sure, okay? Mail-in ballots have changed the dynamic. They get processed more slowly. You have to be more exacting. You have to be careful. It is better to wait, all right? We have 2 reporters covering the campaigns for us tonight. Let's start with Caitlin Collins, covering President Trump, of course. And we have Arlette Saenz. Actually, let's start with Arlette in Wilmington with the Biden campaign. So he came out. His speech seemed more about tone than text in terms of a message he wanted to deliver, with information or some kind of plan. What are they hoping for right now in the Biden camp?
Well,
Chris, Joe Biden had hoped to be delivering a victory speech, that he would have been declared the president-elect by this point. But instead, as the race still remains uncalled, Joe Biden turned to a message of unity. He talked about the need for the process to play out, to respect that process, even acknowledging the fact that sometimes just watching all of these votes coming in, that it can be mind-numbing. But he did note that those tallies, those counts all represent a vote from a real person, talking about the power of voting right now. And you also heard the former vice president speak in very stark terms about the coronavirus pandemic in this country right now. That is something that he has repeatedly stressed over the course of his campaign, saying that he's going to continue getting to work on it right now. They held a briefing on it just yesterday, but he wanted to make sure that that is front and center of Americans' minds at this moment. But really, this speech was about unity. He talked about how politics isn't meant to be a constant warfare between people, saying that people may be opponents, but they should not be enemies. That is something that really was a hallmark of Biden's campaign, as he had talked about the need to unite the country. And tonight he is looking beyond the current race, talking about how Americans do need to find ways to work together. Now, Biden, at the end of his remarks, did say that he hopes to address the American people again tomorrow. That is a moment that he is hoping will be a moment of victory for him. Here in Wilmington, Delaware, the stage behind me remains set for the time being. It's been unused for a few days since Joe Biden came out to speak on election night. But for now, while his aides had hoped that this race would have been called by this moment, they are still in this waiting game, adhering to that patience that the former vice president has called for, as he is waiting to see if he will cross that 270 electoral vote threshold. Chris?
You know, what should have us on what they call tenterhooks is Biden going to win or not? What's he going to do? How is he going to handle this pandemic? But let's be honest. We know what the biggest X factor is right now. Will President Trump, if this election is decided for Joe Biden, will he accept it? And if not, what will he try to do to the rest of us? Let's go to CNN's Caitlin Collins in Washington right now. What is the feel? What is the word in and around the Trump camp?
Well, Chris, the latest we've heard is the president has not prepared a concession speech. And even if Joe Biden's lead is continuing to grow as it has throughout the day in several of those critical states that Arlette was just talking about and that you noted in the key race alert, we are still told the president does not plan to concede. And instead, they are looking to the courts and they are looking to their legal team to try to fight this and drag this out into a prolonged battle, that even though the president has privately said that the math may not be there, he is saying that he wants to be able to cast doubt on the results of this election, as he's attempted to do ever since Wednesday morning when that lead that he had started to slip away. And the president is trying to paint it as something nefarious, even though election officials predicted this is what would happen, because the president told his supporters not to vote by mail. So, of course, they largely, apparently, did not vote by mail. And so we're seeing, as these ballots are being counted that were cast by mail, they are increasingly for Joe Biden. So, of course, the president is looking to the courts. We're told that right now he is actually voicing displeasure with the legal team that they've assembled, basically asking some people to get him more attorneys and questioning whether or not they're actually going to be able to make solid legal arguments in court. And of course, we've seen that they have not really been able to do so in the public eye. But now we have just added another twist to the drama that was already happening at the White House this week and already inside a West Wing that we were told was being described as a frenzied atmosphere today, when people were realizing the president likely could lose his chance to be reelected. And that's that his Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who often has been seen not wearing a mask, has now tested positive for coronavirus. It's not clear, Chris, exactly when he tested positive, but we do know Mark Meadows has been in the residence this week. He's been in the West Wing this week. He's been at the campaign headquarters this week. He has basically been everywhere. And as you can see from this picture, that's the president addressing the campaign staff at the headquarters in Virginia on Tuesday. And you can see Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, standing behind him and not wearing a mask. Several other officials are also not wearing a mask. You can see the campaign officials are, but people like Kayleigh McEnany, Jared Kushner. We know Kayleigh McEnany has already had coronavirus. We do not know about Jared Kushner. And now, I don't think there's ever a good time, obviously, to get COVID-19, but this is truly a worst case scenario as the president is gearing up to contest the outcome of this election. His main top deputy, his chief of staff, has now tested positive.
Right. Mark Meadows kind of proving his own statement correct that we're not going to control this pandemic. He wound up getting it himself. And again, we wish him well. I hope it doesn't spread to his family. I hope that he doesn't have symptoms and he gets back. And, just from a simple stress perspective, if the president's best argument is to try to undermine the democracy, not a bad time not to be too close to the White House. Caitlin, thank you very much. Arlette, thank you as well. So where are we in the state of the race? How does it look in terms of numbers and expectations? Let's get to the magic wall. And Phil Mattingly, good to see you as well, my brother. So what are we seeing in the state of play? How close are we?
Let's kind of top line things. Just give you the full universe as we get started with our shift tonight, which in the seemingly never-ending election week. But let's explain why it's never-ending right now. We are looking at four states that could potentially all go to Joe Biden, potentially give Joe Biden as many as 306 electoral votes, but have not been decided yet. So what are we watching? We're watching the state of Pennsylvania. We're watching the state of Georgia. We're watching the state of Arizona. And we're watching the state of Nevada. Now, the universe of outstanding ballots, that's what everybody wants to know as it currently stands. How much is left? How long is it going to take to count? Can't give you an answer on the latter. But on the former, we're looking at about 90,000, a little short of 90,000 votes in the state of Pennsylvania. In Georgia, there's barely anything left. There's about 14,000 provisional ballots were expected to be counted. There could be somewhere somewhere up to 8,000 military and overseas ballots. The deadline was Friday, 5 p.m. We're waiting to get final numbers on that. Georgia, as you noted, very likely headed to a recount. Joe Biden with a pretty sizable lead there, all things considered, about 4,000 votes. So we'll see how that ends up. Moving over to Arizona, that is a race that, unlike Pennsylvania, where Joe Biden has slowly pulled Donald Trump's lead back and overtaken him and then extended his own lead, Donald Trump has started to try and do the same thing over the course of the last 24 hours with Joe Biden in the state of Arizona, bringing back Biden's pretty sizable lead right now. What we are waiting for in the state of Arizona is roughly about 173,000 votes, the bulk of them, or at least more than half of them, coming from the largest county in the state, Maricopa. We should get those in the morning. That will decide kind of how this race is going. Right now, Biden's team feels comfortable there, but we'll wait and see. The margin has been dropping. And then finally, Nevada. There's about 120,000 ballots left outstanding in Nevada. Joe Biden has a fairly comfortable lead there right now, all things considered, at least compared to, say, Georgia at this point in time. But we're waiting to see how those ballots coming in. The bulk of them coming from the largest county in the state, Clark County. The batches that have dropped over the course of the last couple days have been positive for the Biden campaign, have been beneficial to his lead. It has grown. So that's the map as it currently stands. The reality, I think, Chris, and we've been talking about this now for a couple days, is this is where everybody is looking. Right. This is where everybody is looking. This is a place that Donald Trump had at one point a 600,000 plus vote lead over the course of several days. And
it faded away. But let me ask you something, Phil. One of the frequently asked questions that I see in the universe of skepticism out there is, you're 96% here, 99 in the other one, 90. You guys call races all the time at like 40% of the vote in. Why aren't these states being called? What's the easy answer?
So the easy answer, look, let's lay a couple things out. I think everybody wants finality to this in some way, shape, or form.
If it comes along with accuracy.
That's the biggest thing. And I think that's what you need to keep in mind. Our decision desk, which I am biased here, but think is the absolute best in the business. We have extremely smart people who have been working through this assiduously over the course of the last couple of days, is looking at the entire universe of what's outstanding. Look, everybody's seen the trend line. It is glaringly obvious where this has been headed over the course of the last 24 hours. Why? Election day vote went huge for President Trump. What was left over? Mail-in ballots. Democrats have dominated the mail-in ballots, and the majority of the mail-in ballots have come from Democratic strongholds. Look at Southeast Pennsylvania, still waiting for about 25,000 out here in Allegheny. And it's not just because they've got big margins in these areas, but the mail-in ballots have been even bigger margins as they come in. But you wait and see the universe, as I said, a little shy of 90,000 outstanding, also a universe of provisional ballots. Try and get a sense right now of where those are. I think every desk is taking that into account as well. So we don't call the races. Our decision desk does. You want to know why we're not calling the races? They want to get it right. They want to make sure they understand the full universe before making a call.
And what makes it different than the ordinary course when they do it? It's just that the margins are slim, and when they're that small, they can move with very little votes.
Yeah, I mean, you don't. I don't want to speak for them on this one. They're the expert, but you don't want to call a race when there's any chance that it could change. Right. Again, we've seen the trend line. We know where it's headed in Pennsylvania, and it's been pretty clear. But wait and see, count everything, and we'll go from there.
You know what we've learned? Projections can be wrong. All right, let's go to Senator Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, Democrat, of course. You have that nice little map, just like my fifth grader has on her desk. You got one behind you of the state. You know the state well. You've been saying for days that Joe Biden would take Pennsylvania. You've always had a high degree of certitude. I am assuming that has not changed.
No, it hasn't. Chris, the data crunchers at the Voter Project, they're the numbers on whom their numbers are the ones I place reliance upon. But I don't think it's changed. And I think so far, as you've seen the margin grow, I think it's inexorable. The only question I have is what will the number be, the preliminary number upon which some news organizations may make a determination about a call. Right. But I think ultimately the official count, maybe 2 weeks from now, will hover around 100,000.
Wow. Well, look, the number has to be a coefficient, right, where it's how many votes are still left out there and what's the trending percentages for the two candidates and can it be met or bested by that? And once they feel that certainty, they'll do it. Now, here's the problem with time. Time is accuracy. That's good. But the biggest risk right now, let me ask you, is it whether or not Biden wins Pennsylvania? Probably not. It's how will Donald Trump respond to Pennsylvania being called for Joe Biden? How worried are you about what Trump is capable of?
Well, Chris, we always have to be concerned when you have a president who, on a regular basis, is not only lying about mail ballots, lying about the vote that we're seeing unfold right before our eyes, but he's willing to do virtually anything to undermine our process of voting, and will do anything to distract attention from what's happening. And what's been happening ever since voters cast their votes. The good news is the American people are not distracted. They voted in record numbers. No one seemed to be intimidated or pushed in the direction of not voting. And I think what they're yearning for right now is a president who will lead. And I think they saw that president tonight, Joe Biden. You saw a leader who stood up and provided in a short body of remark unifying, respectful, empathetic comments about where we are in this country, not only with regard to voting and COVID-19, but just how we relate to each other. So they saw that tonight. I think they wish that the president would demonstrate that same leadership.
Well, let's take one more step down the road of what's next. Arizona, Georgia, and you're the vulnerable state in terms of the president's targeting. Why? Easier narrative. One, you got Democrats running your state. He's got a hard narrative to make that, so this was an inside job by Georgia, which is all Republican, by Arizona, same thing, doesn't make any sense. It's you guys he can target. You guys have the rule that was made by a court and not by a legislature. He's going to come at you, and you've decided the election if it goes for Biden. Do you believe Pennsylvania has vulnerabilities in terms of how the balloting was done, the accuracy of the count, anything like that?
None. Chris, this law, Act 77, is a law passed by the General Assembly of Pennsylvania, controlled by Republicans, signed by a Democratic governor. The only issue the president's raised is about a number of potentially number of votes is very small, maybe as little as 10,000 votes. In other words, the votes that are postmarked Election Day and came in Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. He cannot contest the overwhelming number of votes that have come against him, and it's going to lead to a margin that means that Joe Biden will win the state.
Okay, appreciate it, Senator Bob Casey. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's see what happens. Hopefully it gets done completely and accurately, and then this country can find a way forward, because we have the biggest challenges I've seen in a long time. All right, let's get over to D. Lemon. It is amazing, Don, that today was our worst day with cases in the pandemic.
3 days this week. 3 days this week, we had record numbers. It is really unbelievable. And it's really illustrative. It's what you said right off the top here. You see we're in the middle of a historic election. Yep. And then you have an administration that is currently in power right now who have been downplaying.
Intentionally.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
And then, but lying about it, saying, telling in public saying one thing, but then behind closed doors admitting to Bob Woodward, the president, that he knew how deadly this pandemic and how easily it is to be transmitted.
And that's the frustration you have going on right now, Don, is that you have President Trump trying to make people believe something that's not true about the largest celebration of democracy we've had in our lifetime. People came out during a pandemic like we've never seen before. The American people showed up. And yet, at the same time, he's actually doing what he's accusing the Democrats of on the pandemic, lying to you about an inside scheme to keep it quiet. And it's getting worse and worse.
It's always about projection.
Tough days.
It's whatever he projects. And guess what? But guess what you cannot deny when it comes to the pandemic and when it comes to this race? And that's math. Those are the numbers. And I want to talk more about it. You had Bob Casey. I got Charlie Dent. I'll raise you a Charlie Dent from a Bob Casey.
It's a strong play. Strong play.
Charlie Dent is the former congressman from Pennsylvania. Thank you, Congressman, for joining. Before we get to this race, just real quickly, when you hear about the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, and possibly others around them, some aides or what have you, the reporting is still coming through. What do you make of this during the middle of a historic election?
Well, I serve with Mark Meadows. He's a friend. I wish him and his family well. But it's pretty clear to me that so many people in the White House certainly haven't taken this pandemic seriously. I mean, most of us travel around with our masks. We don't go anywhere indoors without a mask, always wearing it. And it just seems that they have just not taken this pandemic as seriously as they have. And I think that's part of the reason why they're going to be unsuccessful in this election. They're going to lose this election because so many people want this issue addressed seriously. And, the White House has been a hot spot. And frankly, they have themselves to blame for it. And again, I wish Mark Meadows well, but I'm just sorry we are where we are.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, about wishing well. But I just remember, I think it was maybe a week or two ago when he was doing an interview with Jake. And he said, come on, Jake, you don't wear it. You're there in the studio. And it's like, of course, we wear these. We have these masks on when I leave this set. If I go to the restroom, sometimes I forget it. I have to run back and get the mask. But we walk around with these masks because we know the science. I want to ask you, let's talk about the election, though, quickly, unless you want to make a point.
Sure. No, I had COVID. I mean, it's a terrible thing. Yeah. It's something you got to take seriously. Yeah.
So the Vice President Biden is trying to set a tone. He wants people to be calm. He wants people to respect the process while the president still wants to fight right now. Listen, there is going to be no graceful departure. And so what does Biden do in this case? I feel, and I think many others do as well, and the president and the administration, they're signaling it, that this is not going to be a traditional exchange of powers. So what does Biden do?
Well, I think what Biden do is what he did tonight. He was talking reconciliation, unity, calm. He's starting to project forward and saying, of course, that he's going to win. He can't declare victory, but he's just projecting confidence, stability, and steadiness, which is a wonderful contrast to Donald Trump, who really displays the traits of, chaos, disruption, dysfunction. And I think so it's a wonderful contrast. And so I think he's trying to rise above it a bit. He knows there's going to be a storm. There are going to be lawsuits, yelling and screaming. But at the end of the day, Joe Biden knows he's going to win and that there will be a transition. And all we can hope for is that Donald Trump will take the transition seriously and show some grace, as did George H.W. Bush or Al Gore or Jimmy Carter, all of whom, really showed us how to help with a peaceful transition of power the right way.
Yeah, and especially even with Barack Obama, considering what the current president had said about the former president, about not being born in this country and so on, the whole birther issue. I want to go back to COVID as part of the question that I'm going to ask you, because I know some Republicans won't think this, especially strong supporters of the president. They won't think it's a mandate. But Joe Biden is also saying, the former vice president is also saying that he has a mandate when it comes to COVID, on climate change, on systemic racism. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I think Joe Biden will have a mandate on COVID. I think there's certainly a bit of a mandate to address climate change and I think racial reconciliation. But I don't know that I think I said last night, I really don't think there's a real specific policy mandate, though, for either Joe Biden or for the Republicans, who can make a case that they did well, too, last night, certainly on the congressional side. But I really think the mandate was more of a governing mandate. It's about steadying the ship of state, getting, basically, projecting to the world that America's back in the game. And that we are going to, we're going to function with some degree of normality. I think that was really the message, because I do believe that voters wanted to send a message. They wanted to get rid of the dysfunction and disruption of Donald Trump, the steadying voice of Joe Biden, but they wanted to make sure that the left wing of the Democratic Party wasn't going to have too much of a say in that administration. So many people, many swing voters, I'm telling you, Don, they voted for Biden, and then they voted Republican down ballot. Enough of them to make a difference. They wanted a bit of a check and a balance, a political balance of power.
Congressman, I have to go, and I don't have much time, but I would be remiss in that if you're watching the numbers, you're in Pennsylvania, obviously a former congressman. As you see it now, where do you see this going?
Oh, yeah. Joe Biden's going to win Pennsylvania. We just heard Bob Casey, Senator Casey. He says 100,000. I'm going to say conservatively he'll get at least 40,000. Trump won the state by 44,000. Biden will exceed that number. He may hit 100,000, but I'll say at least 50,000.
When do you think we'll know?
That'll be the margin. Oh, they're counting slowly. The provisional ballots are going to take a little while longer. I'm hoping we'll know by the end of the weekend. That's what I'm hoping, but I don't want to speak for the people in Allegheny County where they have a little bit.
I thought you were going to say, I'm
hiccup.
hoping we're going to know by the end of the night, which is about 11 minutes or so. Congressman.
This is government work. This is government work.
Congressman, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we're watching those numbers coming out of Pennsylvania and Georgia and everywhere. It could happen tonight. It could happen tomorrow. And as you heard the former congressman say, it could happen by the end of the weekend. But we're going to carry it. We'll be watching for you, and we'll report it. We're going to be back in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. This is CNN.
Only Dish has the Hopper, TV's most powerful DVR.
Look who's here!
It holds up to 2,000 hours of your favorite shows.
You waited. I got all the seasons.
For as long as you need them. Dish, tuned in to you.
The new Ergo Smart Base from Tempur-Pedic responds to snoring automatically. So no hiding under your pillow or opting for the couch. Because it's our first system that detects snoring and automatically adjusts to help reduce it. Your best sleep all night, every night.
The Bissell Crosswave Cordless Max lets you vacuum and wash your floors at the same time. Dry messes, wet messes. It even freshens area rugs.
And when you buy Bissell, you help save homeless pets.
To learn more, go to BissellCrosswave.com.
Homework?
When my kids get stuck on a problem, I'm like, ah!
We get into more fights now.
With Brainly, students can get free step-by-step homework help going from questioning to understanding. Join free now, Brainly.com.
This is Steve. He used to have gum problems. Now he uses TheraBreath Healthy Gums Oral Rinse with clinically proven ingredients, and his gum problems have vanished. TheraBreath. It's a better mouthwash at Walmart, Target, and other fine stores.
If you're over 50, imagine you could turn back the clock on your stiff, achy joints 10, even 20 years. Imagine you could do this without products that just temporarily hide the symptoms and may have side effects. Imagine no more. Get your complimentary sample of Instaflex Advanced just by texting FORM to 369369. Instaflex Advanced is different because it targets the root cause of joint soreness and stiffness. It doesn't just cover up symptoms. Instead, it bathes your joints in its unique combination of 5 key natural ingredients found in no other product. Key ingredients backed by 5 clinical studies. Instaflex Advanced is so powerful, you could have better knees in just 1 week. Maybe that's why it's #1 at GNC. But you